On this episode of Pilot's Discretion, we're joined by EAA Chairman Jack Pelton. He tells us tips for enjoying AirVenture Oshkosh, why this year is a milestone for the Young Eagles program, and what's driving the experimental aircraft boom. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, John Zimmerman of Sporty's. Remember, you can access today's show links and listen to every episode of Pilot's Discretion on our website at sportys.com/podcast. And as always, we welcome your comments by email, podcast@sportys.com. Today's guest has been around the aviation industry about as long as anyone I know, so we have a lot to talk about. Jack Pelton began his career as an engineer at Douglas Aircraft, then moved to Cessna, where he held a number of roles, including CEO. And today he is the chairman of the Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. He's an ATP with multiple jet type ratings, but he's also a longtime aviation enthusiast, having restored and flown vintage aircraft over the years. Jack, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
John, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking with you today.
Let's begin with AirVenture, or some people still call it, I suppose, just Oshkosh. It's the highlight of the summer for so many pilots, me included. And to me, it feels as vibrant and exciting as it ever has. So why in this world of Zoom meetings and virtual reality headsets is AirVenture still so successful and so important?
I think when you go back and look at the history of AirVenture, there's a piece of the AirVenture Oshkosh surprise, if you will, that and it was kind of a result of what Paul Poberezny always referred to, which is, people will come for the airplanes, but they come back for the people. And it's a real cultural phenomenon that takes place. And that's why we all who have learned to love it or have been a part of it always look forward to every year coming back. And, I'm very excited. We're 40 plus days out from AirVenture, and it's once a year for me, I'll call it my extended family reunion, in coming here to see all my friends that are, whether they be exhibitors, people who have flown in, just people in the industry that share that same passion and love that I do for aviation. And we all get together and spend a week taking in everything that we love and renewing those relationships. And it's something we just have grown to just absolutely look forward to. And I think people, until you've experienced it, some people, just assume it's another air show. And it really is more than that.
Yeah, I always describe it as part air show, part trade show, part aviation family reunion. Because I think, to me, the diversity of it is so exciting. You have, jet pilots and home builders and vintage enthusiasts and warbird pilots and dreamers and everybody all together. And to me, one of the things that's exciting about it is everybody feels like they're on an equal footing. The jet jockeys aren't looking down their nose at the student pilots. Everybody's welcoming. So how do you get that distinctive culture? Because you mentioned the word. I think there is a unique culture at AirVenture. People are friendly, people pick up their trash. People are willing to stop and help somebody or give them directions. How do you build and maintain a culture like that?
That's a tough question, John, because it really, while it's the essence of what goes on, I think it has just become inherently in the DNA. And it may sound kind of hokey, but we've had so many generations that have continued to come. The volunteer base that actually is the one that makes this all happen, which is about 5,000 volunteers who are dedicated. And I think they perpetuate that culture. And through the things you said, that, keeping it clean, keeping it friendly. I have often said, in times in our country when things are divisive and we're not getting along, if we could just have the AirVenture culture as our society, everything would be just fine. And I think you get the little stories you hear. One of my friends came, brought his kids for the first time, and he characterized it as, it's the only place I've been where when I camped, I went to the shower house, I plugged in my phone, I left it there for 12 hours, came back, it's right where I left it, and everybody says, well, of course, that's the way we live here. This is our community, and we look after each other.
Yeah, we definitely need a little more of the Oshkosh spirit in everyday life, no doubt.
We do.
What's your favorite part of the show? So if you could sneak off for an hour without anybody noticing, where would you go? What's something that should be on everyone's list?
Boy, I think it becomes very personal. For me, there's certain groups that I have to see. That I happen to own a Cessna 195, and the 195 folks all gather and park in the same area. So it's kind of the family within the family, or the culture within the culture. So I've got to go say hi and spend some time with them, because they're from all over the United States. I love in the evenings just to walk the flight line and see the breadth of all the unique airplanes, the restorations that have taken place in the vintage area, the home built, kind of seeing what is the trend as to what are the most popular home builts. And the home built area for me is interesting, because you could look at a single model and have 10 of them lined up, and because of the way people, the perfection they put into them and the types of paint jobs, they all look different. They almost even have different lines to them. So that's certainly probably one of the most peaceful and rewarding. And again, it goes back to the people. So you walk up to an airplane and you're looking at it, and somebody that owns it's there camping next to it, and you strike up a conversation. You always walk away with a unique story. The person flew from the state of Washington. It took them 3 days. They camped along the way. They restored this Aranca, and it's been in their family. And you just walk away with just story after story after story that adds to I'll call it the depth of the experience of being at AirVenture. Then the worst part is, so you asked what's your favorite. The worst part is when it's all over, you run into somebody back home or wherever you may be who mentions something they saw, and you say, son of a gun, I was there and thought I saw everything all week long, and I missed that one. I can't wait for next year to go back and see it.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. I tell a lot of Oshkosh rookies that while the show center is amazing and you want to go look at the military aircraft on display and you want to see the new gadgets, you've got to give yourself an hour to walk some part of the line. For me, it's just the North 40. I just, like you said, the variety, just walking along, seeing the variety of airplanes, listening to the stories being told. There's something really magical about it. Well, one of the things I know you're celebrating this year at AirVenture is something that's close to our heart here at Sporty's, which is Young Eagles, a program that we've worked together a long time on. What's your goal for Young Eagles as aviation emerges from the pandemic? Hopefully we have more kids coming back out to the airport. What are you looking to do as you celebrate 30 years?
First of all, thank you, Sporty. You were one of the founding companies that supported us along the way, and I think one of the breakthroughs in the program was through your flight training courses, making that available to anybody that takes a Young Eagle ride, which is an incredible value, but it's also very important because it gives the individual the tools they need to actually train and learn about aviation through your program. So that's really, really important. Or coming out of the pandemic, the goal this year is to really re-engage and get people back as volunteers, flying and hosting not only Young Eagle rallies. We've talked internally about this year, talking about one of the principles of the program when it was started 30 years ago was that mentorship of a pilot taking a young person up and being part of their support system and helping them understand aviation. And it doesn't need to be at a giant rally once a year at a chapter. It can be every month. It can be any day of the week. It can be just part of what we as people in aviation are doing to give back our time and sharing our passion with these young people so that they can understand and decide if they want to grow into that. So that's a big piece of the program. For the celebration side of it, it's always good to have a celebration goal. So we have decided that it's 30 for 30. And we, in the 30th anniversary year, the 12 calendar months, we're encouraging people to try to fly 30 Young Eagles, and they will be recognized by EA in doing that. And it's funny, I just got out of my staff meeting, and over the weekend, one of my friends flew 20 Young Eagles, and the discussion came up. There was up at his airport in Door County, 10 flights, 20 kids. And I said, who's going to break it to him that this really doesn't start till July? So those 20. And then one of my staff guys said, wait a minute, last week I flew 9 down in my home airport. I'm counting them towards the 30. I don't know what your rules are going to be, but I'm already on pace to get my 30 in. So it'll be a lot of fun. So, right now we're seeing the momentum picking back up. It's been a great 2022, and seeing the numbers of people who have submitted that they've flown Young Eagles. And we feel really good that we're going to get back to 2019 kinds of numbers. And so that is just very, very encouraging, that the pent up demand, and even whether it be the inflation or the fuel prices is so far right now is not impeding us for people to have that give back mentality. So I think it's a good reason to go fly. It's very rewarding for the pilots themselves and the volunteers on the ground that organize the events. When you're done, you feel like you've made an investment in a young person, and that's always something we all feel good about doing is the giving back.
Yeah, there's really no more enjoyable flight to me than a Young Eagles flight. It's such an exciting thing to share your passion with somebody. And I've noticed over the last couple of years, I did a couple of Young Eagle flights maybe 2 weeks ago, and one of the kids that was flying with me was a really big flight simmer, which has been really hot over the last maybe 18, 24 months. And the knowledge he had just from flying Flight Simulator at home made it such a fun ride. It was just great to, share that with somebody who was obviously thrilled about it. But for a pilot maybe who hasn't flown Young Eagles and they like the idea of it, they'd love to share their passion, but they kind of don't know where to start or they're unsure, do they have enough time? Are they a good enough pilot? What do you tell a pilot who's maybe interested but not sure how to take the next step?
We can provide them with essentially as a little kit that explains the program and can walk them through the steps. And it's pretty basic as far as um, one of the things we encourage is spending time with a young person on the ground, explaining the airplane and what the parts of the airplane are and what they do, really briefing the safety features of getting them in and out of the airplane and what your intent to do on the flight is to, we're going to go up and we're going to, maybe fly over your house or do what the specific pattern or specific mission will be. And then there's a logbook that you can then provide to them there that day when you fly them to memorialize the flight. It's you're not signing off that you were an instructor, but you're signing off that they went for a flight. And then the paperwork to get signed up for the Sporty's ground school course is the next one. I really try to share personal stories of what we have all experienced in flying with young people. The thing I think a lot of people, maybe if they are apprehensive, don't understand is kids are like sponges. They're very inquisitive. They tend to get over any concerns they may have or fears about, what is this flying in an airplane? Everybody's had stories of somebody that's like a little apprehensive and they get in and when they're done, they're beaming. They saw the world from a place they've never seen as a young person, a different dimension, being up in the air. They realize that it's safe, it's fun, and they get to, quite often handle the controls and understand that this thing called flight is well grounded in physics and principles that they too can do this. It's that's probably for me personally the most rewarding is to see the in a very short period of time. You figure like within an hour, where you go from somebody that's never flown to coming out of it with just a whole different perspective and enthusiasm and let's face it, just a smile that's priceless.
Absolutely. And I think you make a great point, especially for someone maybe who's flown Young Eagles in the past, but it's been a number of years since they've done it. The program really has grown. And I know something I spend time with kids after the flight is letting them know it's not just one ride and you're done. There's really a whole pathway there. You mentioned the course that's available from us, but lots of other things, the opportunities from EAA, the chance to apply for scholarships. It's really a whole roadmap that one flight unlocks. And I think that really gets kids and I've seen parents excited that they understand there's sort of a whole program here.
Well, we have also, it's a great segue to talking about our AeroEducate program, which we spent a lot of time over the last 6 years. The kind of the question I always bring to the table is you take the flight, what's next? I mean, how do you keep the young person engaged and continuing to learn about aviation? And so we beta launched it in July of last year, and we're going to see a much bigger rollout this year. And it's called AeroEducate, and it's an online educational course from EAA that allows the parents to have access, their teachers to have access, the Young Eagle to have access, and it's various modules on different types of careers in aviation, from being a pilot to being a mechanic to being air traffic control. And it's a badging system, so there's always activities and things for them to do. There's also things for their teacher if they want to take it back to their school, projects that they can have in the classroom. There's areas in there for their parents to by geographical regions, look at what aviation kinds of events are going on, whether it be at local chapters or local museums or places that they can keep their kid engaged by having aviation themed things for them besides the flight itself. So we think this is going to be a really good next step of engagement for young people after the flight. It's all free. It's all online. It's in front of them. You guys have done such a good job of the learning of, you got to go to where the people are, which is on their tablet or their phone or their with your videos and various things you've done. We're now learning that we've got to stay in front of them, because the parents, the kids, they're all competing with so many other activities in their life, and we think that engagement with the parent is really important, to let them know that we can help support them, their support of their child, especially because so many of them, their parents they're not aviation families, and so they need that support and infrastructure. So we're really excited about getting this really rolling come July.
All right, Jack, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with a few more questions.
Earn your pilot's license, get current, or add a rating. No matter what your goal is, Sporty's pilot training app will save you time and money. It's available on all your devices, including iPad, iPhone, Android, and smart TVs, so you can access Sporty's award-winning videos anywhere. Plus, with automatic sync between platforms and free lifetime updates, you'll always be up to date. Over 25 courses are available, from private pilot to aerobatics. Visit sportys.com/courses to try it free. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion.
We're back with Jack Pelton. And Jack, let's talk about experimental aircraft for a bit, which is obviously a subject that's important to EAA. It's in your name. This seems to be one of the hottest segments in aviation right now, and maybe doesn't get quite enough attention from outside the experimental world. So what do you think is driving this home-built experimental boom?
There's people probably get tired of hearing me with my little elevator speech about the experimental home-built market, because it rolls back to my prior days of coming out of the certified world and running a company that builds certified airplanes. And I'm glad I didn't pay as much attention to it when I was there, because the real secret that we're now kind of unveiling and people are realizing is that on an annual basis, there's more amateur built airplanes that are registered on the FAA registry than all of the Part 23 companies combined. So if you look at the Cessna, the Beech, the Pipers, all of them, they are not building and manufacturing like they did back in the days on an annual basis, the same number of airplanes that the home built crowd is building and registering it. And I think a lot of that is due to the kind of the journey that the home building movement went through from literally just plans built airplanes to now very well engineered kits that are certainly all the way to a quick build that make it much easier, high success rate, great manuals and help and infrastructure to be able to build an airplane that price wise is significantly lower than a Part 23 airplane. Performance on par or better than from an efficiency and fuel burn and all of those other things. And so it's really helped create a place for people to get into aviation. I know everybody always talks about how do you lower the cost hurdle of being involved in aviation. Well, certainly an RV versus a certified Cessna is going to be half or less to be able to get into aviation. So that is happening. The safety record is getting very good. Just a lot of positive things that have occurred as this home built industry, if you will, has really matured into a very sophisticated industry that's on par with any company. This year, as an example, is the Vans aircraft 50th anniversary. They have had people buy and register over 11,000 airplanes of their make and model of airplanes. That is a significant volume of airplanes that are out there. They're extremely well proven. I think there was another uptick over the last 2 years when people were stuck working at home or were unsure about the environment and they kind of hunkered down with trying to find their hobby or to have now time for an interest, and there were an incredible number of kits that were sold, and I think we're going to see a banner year this year at AirVenture with more home builds that have gotten completed, which is really good. So my takeaway that people get tired of me hearing my certified friends is that if you really think back over the last 10 years, if this had not happened, I'm not sure what would have happened to the general aviation infrastructure across this country. These airplanes now have because of the volume, are supporting fuel cell sales. They're supporting the FBOs, the airport hangars, the mechanics. The whole ecosystem in general aviation. It has not gone. It may have gone down compared to post-war, but it has been propped up by a new sector that's very, very strong. And we can't overlook the importance of that for the rest of the flying public.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point there about the evolution of the experimental and home built market industry over the years. I know for many years I sort of had an old school view in my head of, let's go buy some wood and get the plans out and see what we can do. And maybe 10 years ago, I was out in Oregon with the Vans people and saw an RV-12 going together. And my goodness, it just the ease with which it can go together still takes work, still takes dedication, but they have really made that into a whole different experience. And then you get in the airplane and fly it, RV-12 or an RV-10 I got in. I mean, an RV-10 is like a home built Cirrus, 4 seats, and the performance and the fly's great. So I think it definitely, that industry has changed a lot. And I think that's maybe one of the most exciting parts about it is the nature of it allows people to experiment and find new and better ways of doing things. I know that's one topic a lot of people are talking about there is, will we get some electric propulsion into experimental or home-built airplanes? What do you think?
There are some airplanes out there today that are certified, and I think that where we haven't gotten to is really batteries with enough power density to be able to perform a more reasonable mission. I think right now, if you look at some of them, you're looking at an hour or less of flight time, which is good for maybe a piece of a lesson in learning to fly. But until we can kind of crack the code on battery technology and get to where it's, the 3-hour kind of range, and fast charging and all the things that are associated with it, that it's not going to be as mainstream. But with all electric, whether it be automobiles or vehicles of any kind and airplanes, I think it will have its day. It's just, again, waiting for the technology to get to a place that can support it from the aviation world. Pipistrel has a nice product, but it has limitations on flight time, and you got to take the batteries out and charge them, but we'll get there. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm not gonna predict timeline as to how that goes, but there's so much innovation and money being spent today on electric vehicles and other things that I think that the byproduct of that will certainly help support the aviation industry at some point being a beneficiary of that.
So in addition to AirVenture, Young Eagles, all that you do, EAA spends a lot of time working with the FAA, Congress, government agencies to promote GA. And I know there's lots of priorities right now. We hear about many of them, but what's top of your list right now?
I think there's probably 3 that are. There's 2 that are competing for number 1 priority, and that's the Mosaic, which is an acronym for a regulatory change that will open the breadth and scope of the LSA category of airplanes, or having the sport pilot privilege to be able to fly well-proven airplanes that are not going to be as limited in the gross weight limit. So that regulatory change would allow a sport pilot to fly a 172. It'll allow it to fly a lot larger range of home-built airplanes. It's in a kind of, I think, a coming of the acceptance that the sport pilot has been safe. The LSA category has been safe, but there's a lot of airplanes out there with great track records that are missing out on the ability to operate in that area. And it will also deal with a little bit of the home building rules as far as can they be used in flight training and some of the other types of use of home builds that will be included. We're very anxious for that. We hope the rulemaking comes out later this year or beginning of next year. The FAA has been working on it for quite some time. It will be it'll be another lift or boost like Basic Med was, like LSA in the original, and Sport Pilot was when it originally came out. It'll be another big enhancement to keeping people in aviation at a lower cost and price point. Competing with that at a similar lights, or now probably light speed, is the need to get a replacement fuel for the 100 low lead. You know, the EPA is about ready to release an endangerment finding that we got to get rid of lead. There's only one lead producer in the world today. So there's a lot of issues in play that could, quickly and swiftly, due to unfortunate circumstances, get us be in a place where we don't have a replacement fuel. There was a program called PAFI that was doing testing with the goal of 100% replacement, no mechanical changes to the airplanes, drop-in fuel, and they never got to a fuel that worked. We've got some fuels that do work in some of the lower horsepower and lower compression engines, and we launched an initiative with a timeline that says by 2030 we'll have this solved. And the couple keys to that we didn't have in the original program was the production of the fuel and the distribution of the fuel. Those folks are now all at the table, being a participant, which is great because they're going to tell us whether or not the fuel can be mass produced in existing refineries and whether the price point is going to be acceptable and how are they going to distribute. And there's some fuels that are close. There's some folks, the GAMI STC that's out there today. They have a fuel that can be used in a wide variety of airplanes, and they're getting close to having it for what they say will be all airplanes. The only thing that they don't have is it's an STC, and we don't have anybody that has committed yet to produce the fuel. Swift kind of in a similar situation with the 94 octane fuel that works real well, but the solution has got to be something that is commercially viable anywhere and everywhere, including Europe. So there is a genuine need to get rolling on this a lot harder and a lot faster, and get, there's been some congressional allocations of money to help that. We have a seat at the table with all the other associations, and we got to make this happen. Even to the point of, if it's not 100% solution, do we understand and willing to accept? Is it 99% or 90? If you come up with a 98 octane fuel, is that going to be, who's going to get left behind, or can you do something mechanically to outfit those airplanes? I feel really good that we do know enough about fuel that there are no leaded or completely unleaded fuels in the 94 and below that will satisfy a lot of the requirements. But now it's try to expand upon that. So those are the two incredibly important, highest on my radar and priority. The third one is, before you know it, we're going to go through FAA reauthorization again. I think it's got a year and a half or two before it's up again. And every 5 years we go through this battle of privatization of the towers and all the other things that go with that. So we're getting a little thick-skinned on that, and we have in the past done a pretty darn good job of fending off any major disruptions to our air traffic control system or added cost by privatizing. So we're gonna enter into that battle one more time.
So I've heard a theory from some pilots. I want to get your take on this. That part of the reason programs like Mosaic are so slow in moving, especially recently, is that the FAA's got some scar tissue. Things like the whole Boeing 737 MAX saga, and they're a little bit nervous about stepping out and making things easier to approve or certify. Do you think that has some truth, or is that just a convenient story, and the truth is that these are really difficult problems and they just take time to work?
There is truth there, and I think it depends what program we're talking about as to how that applies. There's no doubt in my mind that with the fuel, that clearly applies to it. If you think of the safety implications of introducing a replacement fuel for a fuel that's been around since the 40s, and the what could happen if they don't get it right, if there's doesn't have the properties that they say, and they start having incidents or issues, or the fuel companies they're equally as concerned as the FAA about making sure they're going to produce something that the liability isn't going to actually crush them. So I think that's what kind of happened with the GAMI STC, is they all got cold feet at the end as to how safe is safe. And with the Boeing Max, there's no doubt in my mind there's a correlation. On Mosaic, I don't see that because Mosaic is not really certifying anything. It's just broadening the categories of using existing certified products. That's the lead time on that one is really their own internal processes of developing a rule, getting it into public rule or public comment period, which is a 12-month period, and then implementing after that. And their timetables are just, it's the government. It's just terribly slow. I think you got to call it what it is.
Okay, Jack, we're down to our final segment, which we call Ready to Copy. So I'll throw out some random questions. You give me your quick answer. Are you ready to copy?
I'm ready to copy.
What's the most interesting airplane you've ever seen at AirVenture? Concorde, some new Homebuilt, the military fighter. What's the most interesting one?
I think when the stealth fighter was here that one time, is that the 115?
117?
117. That to me was the most interesting because I had read so many stories about it during tests. I lived in California, and airliners driving by it and it flashing its lights and nobody could pick it up on radar. I just love the whole backstory on it. So that's the quick answer.
What's your favorite vintage airplane? And you're allowed to say Cessna 195 if you want.
That's leading the witness. I think my most favorite vintage airplane is probably the Beechcraft Staggerwing. It has just, there's something unique. There's that picture of Walter Beach getting out in a suit with his hat on, and it is really just beautiful, absolutely stunning.
If you could change one FAA rule, you're king for a day, what would it be?
The elimination of third-class medicals.
Hear, hear. All right, going back to your days at Cessna, the question you're probably tired of hearing, but let's go ahead and answer it. Why can't we build a $100,000 Skyhawk?
I tried to build a $100,000 LSA and couldn't do it. It was 115 at the end of the day. The answer is really, and I enjoy sharing the answer, having spent a career in aviation manufacturing. 60% of the airplane you buy. So it's really the bill of material dictates what the price points can be. So between engines and avionics, all the systems and all of that stuff, only 13% of the airplane is labor. And then there's another 10% that's liability insurance that you've got to cover. So it's really until we have breakthroughs. The avionics guys, they're not lowering their price, they're adding capability, which is wonderful. But I wish somebody could come up with a scaled down glass panel that cost a lot less than it does. And the engine manufacturer, same thing. Those prices just keep $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 just in the engines alone. So that is really the problem with until the bulk of what the cost is comes down, we don't have a chance.
I shouldn't be surprised, but that is by far the best answer to that question I've ever heard. So well said. What's the best airplane Cessna has ever made in its long and interesting history?
I would make sure I would separate the jets from the piston products, because the Citation jet in itself, as far as its safety record and everything, I would say just the CJ family is certainly the best they've ever built. I would think in the piston class airplanes, I have a tough time not truly believing, forget my Cessna heritage, that the Cessna 182 is probably the most all-around, from a performance, payload, range, ease of flying. It is just the perfect airplane.
Yeah, it's a great airplane. It does so much well. I think it'd be hard to press to argue with that. What's your favorite grass runway in America? I know you probably spend lots of time on grass runways. Where's the best one?
I have quite a few favorites, including my home airport, Stearman Field. I really like, grown to love as I've become more planted in Wisconsin. Palmyra in southern Wisconsin has a beautiful wide grass runway. Unfortunately, they don't have fuel at it, but it's about a 400-yard walk to the County Line Cafe. And on a weekend for breakfast, there's nothing better. And to land there and walk in the cafe and see all of your flying friends that have come from other places in southern Wisconsin or Illinois. It's just, and again, it gets back to that whole culture thing. You walk in, I always make sure I wear an EA hat or something, and the conversations start. What do you fly in on? What are you building? where are you gonna go later today? It's just a great place.
Other than your own very good museum at EAA, what's another underrated aviation museum? Obviously, everybody knows about the Air and Space Museum, some other favorites. What's a good one that not enough people know about?
Boy, that's, I still think people don't talk enough about the Air Force Museum at Wright Pat. Smithsonian, like you said, we all know about. The Seattle Museum at Boeing Field is absolutely a gem. Again, probably pretty well known. As far as I've got it. It's Tullahoma, Tennessee, the Beach Museum.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I go in there, it's like the most wonderful piece of history of the Beechcraft airplanes. Very well laid out, great displays, great history as you go through there, and I'll bet most people have never heard of it.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a special place down there. And I would also throw in a vote for the Air Force Museum. I'm biased because it's in our backyard, but it is 98% of the Smithsonian, I think, with some really interesting airplanes. So
it is, and it's another one that you have to tell people, plan on spending time. I mean, it's not just a 4-hour adventure. It's really a day and a half if you take your time in each building.
What's your favorite food to eat at AirVenture? Wisconsin specialty or something else?
That's a great one. So people up here think I'm nuts because I'm a brat critic, and I love brats. And up here they say, brats are for tourists. And if you really want a brat, you have it on your home grill or you parboil it, and it's not something you go out for. Because I'm always complaining, hey, Saturday, where can I go out and get a good brat? It's like, Jack, fire up your barbecue. So I have to say a brat. And then admittedly, my dietary habits during AirVenture is eat if you can and when you can, or maybe and grab whatever you can grab because you're on the run all day long.
Yeah, the root beer float is an essential item. It's not a luxury at AirVenture. It fuels you. All right, Jack, our last question is always the same on pilot's discretion. You have one final flight, and we want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
One final flight would be in my Ryan PT-22, and I would fly it to Sequoia Field in California, which is the field that my dad learned to fly in the Army Air Corps in a Ryan PT-22. Coming home.
A fantastic answer. Jack, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, John. Great talking with you.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporty's, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and links to additional information, visit sportys.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.